All right, we are live. Hi, everyone. It's Danielle here from CNY's Patient Support Program, The Fertile Spirit. And I'm joined today by Amira Posner, sorry about that, who is you're based in Toronto, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Toronto.
She's a therapist. I'll let her tell you guys more about herself, but she's a therapist and she specializes in working with infertility or people on a fertility journey, and has actually been part of the CNY community for a long time, and leads a group in Toronto, and just has so much wisdom from her own journey and from working with other people in this space for so long. So I'm really excited to have her on here. Her Instagram is awesome, and she's always posting things that I just are really helpful for me to get through the day. So I'm happy to have her here. Amira, do you want to share a little bit more about you and, where you're at
Yeah.
and how you came to this work?
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me talk. I feel honored. Um, and I think, like many of you listening, I can sort of relate to some of your experience. I came into this work quite organically after going through secondary infertility. So this was 12 years ago, and we had conceived our daughter, and it was no problem. And it was when we were trying to have number two that there was a problem. So we went through all the fertility tests after, many months of it not being successful, and they discovered a number of different issues, and we did a few IUIs, but they recommended that IVF would be our best option. And that we did IVF, and we had a really great outcome. We ended up having twins. And I say that, but I dismiss how difficult the journey was, because I've never gone through anything that felt so hard. I remember just feeling, defective. I felt, like I wanted to isolate myself. Just my relationship to my body, and wondering what happened. And, it was really a difficult period. And going through it, I didn't feel like there was a lot of support out there. So I was a social worker by profession, and I just knew, sitting there in the clinic in the morning, that if I get through this, that this is what I'm going to do. I just felt it in my heart. And and then that's what happened when my twins turned two. I thought, like, this is the time. I'm going to just start a group. I'm just going to start a group, and I'm not even going to make the content for the group until I actually have the women participants. So that's what I did. I got the participants, and we met for 6 weeks. And when I saw these women come together and they could share about their common experience and their coping, you could see how worthwhile it was. So
Yeah.
it kind of snowballed from there. And now it's 12 years later, and I'm so grateful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It always blows me away how, like, these things that feel like and are in so many ways our biggest challenges end up, not always, but so often, becoming these places where we have, like, it becomes a gift in a way, or like there's this incredible wisdom that comes from it. And so I just hear that in your story, and that you've really been through it, and that you can hold space for people. I always say that, like, healing happens in community, and I think about how as human beings, and especially as women, and you think about just like how we evolved as human beings in community, like, and that in this fertility, and I think it's changed so much in 12 years, and even in the last like 2 or 3 years it's changed, and the conversation is becoming more normalized, and people are giving voice to it. So thank God for that, and for people like you who are a part of that change. But
And
I just,
you.
oh, thank you. um, but yeah, I guess I wonder, like, what you see happen in your groups in terms of like the shifts that take place, or the things and how they're shared. And I'm seeing some people, hey, everybody who's watching, hi, Asia and Jamie and Melissa. And then Kimberly saying that she is, that she's just found out that her second IVF transfer failed today. I'm sorry.
So hard.
Yeah. So, but just to be with it, you know, like to be with it together, and how that, I don't know, how that may shift things for us and our experience of what's going on. And I guess I'm wondering what you've seen in the groups and in the community.
Yeah. So I find it really amazing. Like group is like magic. And I think everyone's journey is different, right? Some, in my group, I'll have women with primary infertility and secondary infertility. Some women have started treatment, some women, are on their second IVF. But no matter where you are in your journey, I think it's really the common emotions that are very similar. Everybody's struggling with feelings of jealousy, feelings of, maybe not being as worthy as they really are, feelings of anger and sadness, and the triggers out there are all the same. And so just by sharing these experiences, everyone gets it. Everyone understands. So you don't feel so alone, and you feel like you have that community. And many of the women that go through the groups, they're still friends. They stay in touch. They go on together. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. This is like a tricky question to ask, and I've kind of like wondered about this, but I do wonder, you talked about jealousy, and I think there's a lot of comparing and despairing, and even within the, I've seen just even like within some of the Facebook groups and stuff, it's like, oh, well, I got this many eggs, and how'd you do this, and what meds are you on, and I'm on this, and there's a lot of support, but there's also some of that comparison stuff. I guess I just am wondering how, when there are people in your group who actually get pregnant and have a baby, and there's other people who are still in the journey, like, what is that like to kind of hold that tension of, maybe tension's not the right word, but
Yeah, it's
yeah.
actually very interesting, and it's a good question. And I find it so interesting because I've run the group. I don't even know how many times,
Mm.
like many, many times. And I think maybe twice, two women on separate times shared their news. And it was hard for them to share. And it was something that they came to me first and we talked about it. And the women were really supportive, and I'm sure sort of behind the smile it was a trigger, because it like, that's, I don't think, anything we have control over. To some extent, it's just part of us being human being, right? It's like embedded in us. So yeah, so it was just working with this.
So you're
And
saying that like only twice in this, like all
yeah,
these years, that it was kind of felt like
yeah.
difficult.
I
Yeah.
think, I think even in the context of being in a support group with other women struggling with the same thing, the women are very, even more respectful and even more sensitive in terms of like being, just sensitive to share that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I've seen it. But when they did share it those two times, it was well received, and we were even able to discuss it. Just, how are people feeling, and kind of use it as an actual, live, beautiful experience, but also on some level a little bit of a trigger.
Yeah. And sometimes I find, as painful as it is, that when we are triggered enough to actually feel our grief and to actually allow ourselves to feel our jealousy or whatever it is, and to like really let it move through us, the feelings, it's incredibly healing. It's like a detoxification of all this stuff that we're holding on to, wanting to be, you know, you know, together, or, graceful, or, and just to really like allow yourself to really be affected by something, and to like go through that too, because so much of that gets stored in our bodies and in our psyches. And so I just want to respond to a couple of comments. I don't know if you can see all of them. So
I can't, and it's probably better.
Okay. So let's start with this first. So Kimberly is asking, how do you get into this group? And so I want to just say two things. We're gonna share information about Amira's group, if that's okay. We can share it in the chat if you have information about it.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, and so I'll put that in at the end, you guys, so you can see that. And like I said, she's been running, or you've been running these for 10 years, 12 years now?
Yeah. I used to run it at a hospital here, Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto, but then online now with COVID.
Okay.
So
Oh no, we just lost her. Maybe she'll come back. In the meantime, you guys, this is a kind of a perfect timing. So CNY Fertility, let's see. CNY Fertility, the Fertile Spirit, which is the program that I'm Danielle, I'm the director of this program. We have a membership program, and we are going to be, here she is.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
No worries. It was actually good time. It's okay.
It actually just shut down. Sorry.
No problem. I was just, in addition to your group, I was just sharing that at CNY, we've decided, Dr. Kiltz, in the last couple of weeks, actually, that we also have a membership program, and people who are CNY clients will get 3 months of free group support. So we'll have these virtual groups where we're just really holding space. It's like a support circle. And I will include information about that in the link as well. But I think there are so many people out there needing this. So there's no kind of shortage of, there's no shortage of need. And the reality is there's actually a ton of support out there, and there's more and more. So I will post all that info, both about Amira's group and about the CNY Fertile Spirit stuff as well. And one of the great things about Fertile Spirit is as we grow, we want to keep collaborating with people like Amira and like all of our different coaches who each kind of have a specialization and something really special that they bring to this. So it's kind of like, if you're part of the membership, you get to have that experience of the expertise of all these different wonderful therapists and coaches and stuff like that. So thank you, Melissa. I just wanted to say, or read Melissa's post as well. She said, going into IVF, I told myself I wouldn't compare my results to anyone else's, because you can always find people who do better and those who do worse or did worse. My biggest support was a friend who had 9 retrievals with no baby. Then she went to a donor embryo and had a son. I realized there are always people who have it harder.
That's excellent. That's true. It's perspective, and that's really important. And that's one of the things that, we can work with in mind body. And I'm sure you do a lot in your practice as well. And when we have a very narrow perspective, it's harder. And, we tighten up in our bodies and we reject. And when we're open to it like that, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I know we were calling this talk, the art of waiting. And so I thought, because you are an expert and you've had so much experience and you've worked with so many people going through this, do you have any, any thoughts in terms of what is it to wait, and what is the art of waiting?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the saying, and actually there's a book. Have you heard of the book, The Art of Waiting?
I haven't, actually.
Yeah, so it's a book, and I kind of took the term from I really like that, because it not only encapsulates art, but the art of waiting. And it really is an art, and it's a really hard art. And I was trying to think, if I could just sum it up in a few different points to help people, what would that really mean? And then my husband's like, I'm going to film you and then we'll send it to TED. I was like, no. But I think one really salient point, or one really helpful thing and super simple, is just acknowledging that there's part of this in our fertility journey that we can control, and part of it that we can't, right? And that's difficult, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's what's really scary, I guess. We don't like uncertainty. We want to know what's going to happen, especially when it comes to, our future and building our family. And so I found in my work that when you can start to hone in on the things that you can control and sort of release and let go and accept the things that you can't, you start to feel stronger and better.
So in terms of like the things you can control, I guess it's totally different for everybody, but I feel like there are probably some people out there watching this who are like, what can I control? Amira, tell me, what would you say? I mean, maybe it's like a hypothetical or something, but just some ideas about that.
So you can control what you put in your body. You can control how you move your body, how you fill your mind. You can control your breath. You can control, what you do in your spare time. You can, you can control getting support.
Yeah, totally.
Those are in your control. It's the other stuff that's hard.
So interesting. I talked to a client this week who's been struggling, was referred to us through one of the doctors at CNY. And, we just had this kind of 15, 20-minute talk. And then I talked to her for a session shortly thereafter. And she's like, can't believe how different I feel in 24 hours. Cause like she had finally just let it out, and like just even a few like little pearls that she was able to take with her. And it is amazing like how much our thoughts do create our reality, and the things that we take in, whether it's the food or the information or, the relationships, like they do make such a huge impact. And to really be gentle with ourselves through this, because it can be so hard. So hard.
Self-compassion. That's a huge piece, right? Just like intentionally being kind and compassionate to ourselves. And it's a hard one because it's not a natural way, right? We're not taught as little girls, be compassionate to yourself. We're taught to be compassionate to others. But when it comes to ourselves, it's different. So it's a practice. And, in the group, we do the loving kindness meditation, which I'm sure you've heard of. And it's so powerful. Just, actively bringing that love to yourself. And sometimes it's weird to feel.
Yeah, I don't know which one. I know there's a few different meta loving kindness. The mantra I really like is I love you, keep going. I love you, keep going.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's like, whew. And
so I can send you the one that I was referring to, because not only do you start with offering the loving kindness to yourself, but then you can offer it to like the people around you and people that you actually have difficult relationships with, which is very interesting because that is not something one would normally think to do. And so you can use it as a tool for even some of your triggers, just trying to like channel that really, that love and kindness despite that strong negative feeling. We can have mixed feelings.
Yeah. And again, I think that loving kindness and that offering it both to ourselves and outward is kind of reflective of the power of the acts of service, and like even being in community, like in a group, and how we can support each other. It's like there's something about it's this balance of like, how do you take care of yourself? And that when you realize that you are this kind of like well of love or well of wisdom that you can also offer to other people, it kind of almost resets your nervous system. So you realize how immense your capacity is, and that's like the beauty of doing this work. And it actually ties into Viola, I hope I'm saying that right, shared this, and I'll share it with you, and maybe you have some feedback, possibly, not to put you on the spot for her, but she writes, I also had secondary infertility, and we did IVF. Our first fresh embryo transfer was successful, and the pregnancy ended at 17 weeks to an incompetent cervix. We went through 3 more transfers, and they failed or were chemicals. Then our last transfer was successful, and she started bleeding at 6 weeks. So now she's on bed rest, scared to death, but was diagnosed with SCH. So I went to school for bereavement and grief because I want to help those who have loss.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's really That's beautiful. That's hard. It's hard, going through treatments and having a later term loss and, things that, again, are so uncertain. And, unfortunately, it's embedded in every aspect of our life. Right. But, to take that and to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, to me, it's like holding it all, her own, your own fear, and then also at the same time giving something back and like she wrote, that she went to school for bereavement and grief to help others too. So it's kind of like everything feels like this balance. It's just like holding this balance. There's this really amazing, I may have shared it before, but it's this like Zen Zen proverb about becoming a lake. And I won't go through the whole thing right now, but it's like the things that happen, the things that feel bitter or difficult in our lives, like they keep coming, but it's like we become a lake. So in the thing, there's like this little glass of water, and like the Zen master tells the student, like, cause he's struggling with something, put some salt in this small glass of water and take a drink of the water. And the student takes a drink and he spits it out and it's so salty. And then he's like, okay, we're going to go for this walk. And they walk to this lake. And he says, okay, put that same pinch of salt in the lake. And so he puts the salt in the lake and he takes a drink and he says, I don't taste any salt, and the Zen master says, become a lake. So that idea of like, these things keep happening, these challenges, but we become bigger. We have more and more capacity to hold them. We become a lake. And so I love that, because I think that's what I'm reminding myself to do all the time.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And like, just going back to, having perspective and a bigger picture, right? And right now, when we're in this piece of it, like you can't see the bigger picture. And there's a beautiful quote that talks about, I can't say it to do it any justice, but we live our life from beginning to end, but we can only really make sense of it when we look back, right? And make those connections about why this happened and why that didn't work and why we ended up here. And maybe you can even look back in your life now and make those connections from things that happened before that didn't make sense then.
I know, it's always in retrospect. And I think what you keep saying about like the uncertainty and how we're so faced with the reality of uncertainty when we're on this path and when we're struggling with fertility, but that it really is, it's kind of the realization that we are always in the space of the unknown. We just forget it, or we just think that
it's repressed, I think, when you're not going through a struggle, like, with a life or death struggle or something with, intense yearning. We don't really think about it day to day, most of us. Yeah. Thank goodness, right? But when you're dealing with something difficult, it's kind of there right in front of you. And and I find in my work, the women will get pregnant and then have a little period of it going away, but then it will come back. And, the anxiety or the uncertainty will go into the pregnancy. And then, and then it goes on and on and on. And so it's an opportunity. This is an opportunity.
Yeah. I'm wondering also how there's a lot of trauma in this experience, especially if you've gone through multiple cycles or you've had multiple pregnancy losses. And again, not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, like, because I noticed there's this, it's a very, even so when women do get pregnant, like that's what made me think of it. We'll find that like throughout their pregnancy, it's almost like until the baby comes, it's just like doesn't even necessarily feel real for them because there's so much fear. And I guess I just wonder how you work with that, or if you work with that
Yeah,
sometimes.
very natural, right? You get to that stage and there's still anxiety, and the anxiety does dissipate. It does dissipate once, you start to get positive feedback and the experience, turns around and becomes positive. Um, so that's good news.
Mm-hmm,
So it
mm-hmm,
doesn't, like, it's not as intense as it feels now as we're going through the journey, and when we, reach, when we get pregnant and we're in early pregnancy. But I think you made a good point just talking about like the devastation and the trauma in cycles that, aren't successful, and then going into new cycles. And I think that's where the mindfulness is really helpful. And, really, as much as we can do the work to feel the sadness and to feel the pain and to allow it to move through us, there's something to be said about really trying to bring a fresh lens and a fresh perspective to each treatment,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? Whether
Yeah,
it's brand new IVF or another cycle, because
yeah,
it's another egg, it's a new embryo, it's like a different month. Everything about it is different,
yeah. Yeah,
right?
I love that. Yeah, I hope you guys are hearing that. um, I'm also just reading some of the comments. I guess Dr. Magarelli, they're talking about like grading the embryos, and Dr. Magarelli says that grading is a beauty competition, and that just that like this thing, and Jennifer Waters, who's one of the coaches here and has been at CNY Healing Arts forever and does functional medicine and offers a functional medicine program for working with preventing miscarriage and improving egg quality, which she always says, you are not your numbers, and like even this thing with like the grading of the embryos, it's like I cannot tell you how many stories, and I'm sure you too have heard, like it's like the embryo that didn't have the great grade is the one that ended up being the baby, so it's
Yeah,
like we also can get so caught up in that. And
right, exactly. And I'm a good example.
or like
My twins were day 3 embryos, right? And, at the time that I had them, day 5 transfers were coming out, and they were a day 3 transfer. And, like, I was really bummed that we weren't going to wait till day 5, and they weren't the top notch ones. And, the doctor assured me it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, it would be great if they look good, but they can't really tell unless they, do.
mhm,
And they didn't have that test when I was going through it. So, I think that's great advice. Like,
mhm.
you, having trust too, like trusting your treatment team and trusting your body. And that's also takes practice when you've been through failed cycles and losses and, you know, d- difficult, difficult times.
Yeah, yeah. Your energy is so lovely. It's like it just makes me. I'm like, oh, I know why people are getting so much from just being with you in this. It's like really, yeah. I feel like you create a lot of space for whatever is coming up.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too, Danielle.
Thanks.
Same
um,
fertile spirit.
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think I came up with that last summer. I mean, Dr. Kiltz has his book, The Fertile Secret, and I was just thinking like it's I feel like the opportunity of this journey is not just about having the baby. That's obviously a huge goal and the goal for people, but it's like, what is it to have a fertile spirit? Like, what is it to live a fertile life? What is it to take in everything that's coming and to like realize that I know it's about the destination. I get it. I get how much, everyone wants to be a mom and have a healthy baby. But it's like all of the treasures and the gifts and the wisdom and the depth and the friendships and the knowledge that you gain as you go through it. Like that's a fertile life. Like that's, you
Yeah.
know.
be there for the journey, right? We can't just be focused on the end, because there's things that happen all, throughout that we'll miss if we're not present for it.
Yeah.
And we change throughout it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
change from treatment to treatment. And sometimes what was not ever an option suddenly is an option, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. I just want everyone to really know, like, there is this support here, and it does exist, and you are not alone in this. And I know it can feel like it. And I know sometimes we want to isolate, because sometimes when we feel crappy, we isolate, that's what we do. But it's really like, it's that leaning in that, there's the Sheryl Sandberg book, it's like, really, like, the instinct might be to pull away, but really, if you lean in, there's so much support. And yeah.
You're not alone.
Mm.
I really like, have you heard of Tara Brach?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like her work. I find it very helpful and healing, and she has, guided meditations and Dharma talks, and she
Mm-hmm.
talks a lot about acceptance and letting go and
Yeah.
self-compassion.
Yeah. And that's another thing, you guys, like, just like Amira was saying, what we take in, like, what we have control over is, like, what we put into our bodies, what we put into our minds. So even something like getting a Tara Brach audiobook and actually going on a walk, and actually, like, or even if it's just taking off your shoes and, like, feeling the earth beneath your feet in your front yard and listening to that, just even for 10 minutes, like, it creates a shift. And also, these shifts that are created, it's not just psychological and emotional. There is a physiological, we know this now more than ever, everything works together. So there's a physiological impact of all of this. It regulates the nervous system. It lowers cortisol levels and adrenaline levels. We can even find moments where we feel joy and we have more oxytocin, and all of these things help our fertility too, on a very physiological level. So, we might be the, like, soft, I know there are doctors on here every week and nurses, and they're amazing, and they're telling us about the latest, interventions and drugs. And, like, that's all amazing that exists, and we love them and we love their expertise. But I really want to give weight and power to kind of the impact that these daily things, like the slowing down and taking your breath, and how that changes things in your body. And Dr. Kiltz, who's been doing this forever and is, like, the master, he created his healing arts centers for this reason. He supports this Fertile Spirit program for this reason. Tara Brach, I'll write it in the comments that someone's asking.
And you don't even have to download a book. You can go to her website, and she has, I think, thousands, probably so many podcasts from back to many years ago, and you can look at the names of them and pick one that has a title that resonates with you, and then put on your earbuds and go for a walk and listen to it.
Yeah. Melissa is asking me if I'm out of New York and what doctors I work with. I'll just say that I'm actually based in California, and at CNY, I think like 65% at this point of our clients are travel clients. So we have a very virtual team. We have a whole global travel team. The Fertile Spirit works virtually. We are building this in-house support for people who are traveling to Syracuse and Albany, who might want someone there, like, especially if you're traveling alone. But even if you're not, we're working with a couple amazing practitioners, and this will all be announced pretty soon, but who can be there to meet you, to, kind of be a person who's there for you, to support you through a retrieval or a transfer. So we're going to have that at Albany and Syracuse, which I'm really excited about. And then as far as the doctors, I mean, we are a CNY support team, so we work with all the doctors as requests come in. And yeah, this is what we're doing. And then Kim saying, Amira is the most calming presence. She was like medicine for me while I was experiencing infertility. Kim
Oh,
Smiley.
so sweet. Thank you. That's nice. I love
Yeah.
this. And, you know, it's easy for me to like preach all this on the other side. And, you know, it's all about perspective. And I strongly feel that, like you said, Danielle, we need to also enjoy our lives as we work towards what we get to. We
Mm,
can't, we can't, we can't just miss this time
mm,
and,
mm.
so tunnel vision.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to repeat that because that really landed for me. Like, we don't want to miss this time of our lives because this is our lives happening right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So let's
yeah.
work on our perspective and be here now and also work towards what we want.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. This is really beautiful, and I hope we can find more and more ways to collaborate with you with the Fertile Spirit. I think you're a real wise voice in this and presence, and it's a real gift to have you as part of this community. So thank you
Thank you
for
so much, Danielle. It was
yeah,
lovely chatting with you
of
and thank you.
course. And when we get off, I'll add your info if that's okay to the chat. So anyone listening, if you check back in a few minutes, I'll have Amira's info there um, and about her group and a little bit more about kind of what's happening with Fertile Spirit as we evolve. So we'll see you guys soon. I'm going to be back, I think, next Friday afternoon with Renee, who has had her own experience with endometriosis and is a doula and works at a physical therapy clinic where they do a lot of pelvic floor therapy. So we're going to be talking about that. And that's a huge thing that also doesn't have enough voice. So we'll be back next week. And if you guys have other suggestions for people who you want me to talk with on here, feel free to send a message, Danielle at thefertilespirit.com, and I'll put Amira's info in here as well. So thanks, you guys. Have a beautiful day. Take care. Thank you, Amira.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.